I just tweeted just an absolutely precious picture from Miami. It is a picture of two white women walking down the street, Trump humpers, walking down the street wearing Blacks for Trump T-shirts. Big, giant letters, Blacks for Trump. These two white women. It's, it's like kind of sad, and I captioned it, the best and the brightest of MAGA world converge on Miami, which turns out was also the title of one of the diaries over on Daily Kos. My apologies if I'm being derivative here. And I'm looking on the TV screen here, and I'm seeing maybe, I don't know, 50 people, 100 people. He had about 100, between 100 and 200 protesters or lovers or whatever who showed up for him when he got indicted in New York City on criminal charges. Now he's being indicted on criminal charges in Miami. These, of course, are federal, not state. I think that the lack of protesters actually is an important thing. The fact that there's only a couple hundred people tells us that, number one, the prosecution of Donald Trump is really, really important, and I'll get to why in just a moment, aside from all the obvious stuff. And two, how it came to be, why are there not thousands of people? I mean, keep in mind, Donald Trump hired 4 buses to transport people to Miami. He advertised this. He promoted it on social media. It's all over Facebook. It's on his Nazi-infested social media site, and he's got a couple hundred people. I mean, maybe that's all the people who came in the buses. Maybe that, I don't know if these are Miamians, if that's the right word, or if they're people who came, on the buses from, other parts of the state. But it's kind of a pathetic showing. It's not the, thousands of people that he had on January 6th. Now, as to why and why this is important, the reason that there's so few protesters and the reason that it mostly looks like kind of a middle-aged white version of a Grateful Dead concert group or something. I mean, it's like it looks like groupies. It doesn't look like protesters. You understand what I'm saying? I mean, these are not people who are there to engage with the police or to declare 1776 like Lauren Boebert tweeted on January 6th. These are just groupies. And the reason why is because Merrick Garland has charged over 1,000 people for the crimes they committed on January 6th. And so the genuine, the people who are genuinely violent, the people who are, or the people who believe themselves to be patriots. I wrote a piece a year or two ago, and we talked about it at length that day on this program, titled something like "They Thought They Were Patriots, Wouldn't You?" or some words to that effect. And I was just asking the rhetorical question, and and I'll ask it again. If you believed that, for example, let's say, Trump took the White House, that it looked like he actually won the election in 2020, and Joe Biden lost. But the compelling evidence in your mind, enough to convince you, came out to prove that actually Trump had lost the election and Joe Biden was the president and it had been stolen from him, might you not show up at the Capitol building? Now, you might not beat a cop, but you might show up, right? I mean, we stand for things in this country. So I think that what has happened is that we're looking at, with this pathetic showing of Trump groupies, I think what we're looking at is, number one, the impact of holding people to account. And that's why I said it's so important that Trump be prosecuted, because you want future presidents to be thinking twice, just like these groupies, these so-called protesters, are thinking twice about engaging in violence. You want future presidents to think twice about engaging in criminal activity. I mean, Nixon got away with it. Reagan got away with it. George W. Bush got away with his war crimes and lying us into 2 wars. It's like Republicans just get away with stuff. And that led to just this explosion of criminality with Trump. Maybe this is the end of criminal Republican presidents. I don't know. So, number one, I think it's really important that, we hold the president to account. And number two, what we're seeing here is, I believe, the impact also of the January 6th committee, of people realizing, people who genuinely believed on January 6th, when their only source of information was actually the sitting president of the United States who was saying, I've been robbed. And, we're Americans. We tend to believe our presidents, for better or for worse, whether it was the Gulf of Tonkin or whether it was, whatever. But the January 6th committee laid it out for the world. So all that's left now is this rump group, this fringe, these groupies, this cult of personality that is deeply in love with Donald Trump because, well, he hates the same people they hate, don't you know? Or they're just gullible. I suspect you're going to find an awful lot of these people are QAnon followers. This toxic cult that has, it's now basically one of the Christian sects, or at least it calls itself that. And you've got, Mike Flynn and friends going around the country doing their tour and talking about, how America is a Christian nation and all this stuff and, promoting QAnon. I think that's all he's got left. And that's why I said he may end up being the Republican nominee for president just because of the way that we do primaries in this country. But there's not a chance in hell he's going to be president again, unless some real disaster happens with regard to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. So, all that said, I just wanted to add one other note before I get to my geeky science, and then I'll pick up your phone calls here in just a couple minutes. And that is that it is tempting to be gleeful. All right, when I opened the show, I said happy Indictment Day, or happy Arraignment Day. But this is not a moment that we should be happy about. We should be, I think, respectfully pleased, perhaps, that the rule of law is being followed, at least so far, that a criminal is being held to account, or an alleged criminal is, but he committed his crimes in front of the whole world. We all saw it. But I think it's, A, it's too early for us to celebrate, and B, I think it's a little unseemly. We should be more sober about this. This is really a tragedy. What we are watching played out is an American tragedy. It was a tragedy that a man with very little competence to serve in office and no commitment to his country whatsoever became the Republican nominee in 2016. It was a tragedy that he reached out to Russia and said, I want to work with you guys. And that 20 minutes after the meeting in Trump Tower with Vilsaskaya, or whatever her name was, the Russian lawyer who was there on behalf of Vladimir Putin, 20 minutes after that meeting, Donald Trump starts tweeting about Hillary Clinton's emails. Nobody's even talking about her emails. That was a tragedy, that a foreign government, that Vladimir Putin came into the United States, sent his people into the United States, and hijacked our election. It was a tragedy that Facebook allowed the Internet Research Bureau to run their trolls and allowed the Cambridge Analytica to steal all that information and then use that to promote the Trump presidency. It was a tragedy that we allowed an agent of Vladimir Putin, Paul Manafort, who had taken $14 million from Putin to install Viktor Yanukovych as president of Ukraine on behalf of Putin, a known agent of Vladimir Putin, ran the Trump campaign for free. Of course, for free because Putin was paying him or had paid him. He owed Putin big time. It's a tragedy that a political campaign it's a tragedy that when Paul Manafort and Donald Trump became the nominee and the campaign leader, that the Republican Party dropped from their platform any criticism of Russia and any support for Ukraine. It's a tragedy that this man became president of the United States and in the first week of his presidency invited the Russian foreign minister and the Russian ambassador into the Oval Office and gave them top secret information about an Israeli spy that was operating in Syria, that burned an entire spy network. I mean, just imagine if a Democratic president had done any of these things. We would never hear the end of it. We would be hearing about it every single day. This little riff that I just did in the last 3 or 4 minutes would be on continuous loop from every single Republican politician in America. Every American could recite chapter and verse. Every single crime that Democratic president or just a remote association with Russia of that Democratic president. But for better or worse, Democrats are interested in running the government and running the country and making life better for average American citizens. And Republicans, you know, they're just all about grievance and hate and revenge. And, you know, cutting deals with foreign autocrats. Viktor Orban is a little Putin in Hungary, and CPAC has now twice done their conventions there. Viktor Orban comes over to the United States and speaks in Texas at a CPAC convention, Conservative Political Action Conference. This should tell you everything you need to know about the Republican Party and about Donald Trump, and why this is not a moment of celebration. This should be a moment of shock and sober reflection.